And in which war or time period did you serve?
The Vietnam time era.
Okay. And what branch of service were you in?
United States Army.
And what was your highest rank?
Sergeant First Class, E7.
Okay. And what general locations did you serve?
Well, as a member of the Guard, I've served in many different states for annual training. Mm-hmm. But basically the Guard, the units were located here in Connecticut. The first unit was, the 238th is the unit that I belonged to. They were in Hartford, Connecticut when I enlisted in 1971. And from there we moved up to Camp Hartel, Windsor Locks. We stayed there for a few years. Then from there we went to the New Britain Armory, and we stayed there for a number of years. And from New Britain we went to the Middletown Armory, and we stayed in Middletown Armory for a number of years. And then the last armory that we were in was the Meriden Armory. And in 1992 is when I left the military. And the next year, the 238th Supply and Service Battalion was disbanded. And the unit and the armory closed.
Okay. And were you drafted or did you enlist into the military?
No, I enlisted.
Okay. And where were you living at the time that you enlisted?
New Britain, Connecticut.
Okay. And do you recall the date that you enlisted?
Yes, December 7th, 1971. All
right. And why did you pick the Army as the branch of service to join?
Well, I joined, actually, I'm trying to think. It was the branch that I thought I fit the best in. And I went to the Hartford Armory, actually, and I talked to recruiters and they about joining. And because I was joining a National Guard unit. So I wasn't joining an Army unit at the time. So I was looking for what National Guard units in the state, what the type of units they had. Mm-hmm. And, they had infantry units, supply units, mechanical units, all that type of stuff. And I just decided I'd like to get into the supply unit that they had. And that unit was at the Hartford Armory. And so I went upstairs to see the sergeant that was running that unit. And I told him I was interested in joining. And the following week I went there and I signed the papers and joined.
Okay. And so tell me about your first couple of days in the service. What was it like enlisting, and then what did you do during that time?
Well, I mean, basically like I said, I enlisted in the National Guard. So I went to the Hartford Armory and we filled out the paperwork there. And, that's where I took my oath of enlistment. Then from there, I did guard drills for December of 71, January, February of 72, and in March of 72, I went to basic training. And that was like around March 6th of 1972. And then that was the whole basic training deal. You get on, we flew down and we got out on a bus and we went to camp and okay, you're going here and you're doing this and you're giving the clothes and the whole bit. And it was quite an experience.
Yeah. And so how did it feel to join the Army? Was it exciting?
Well, I had kind of figured that, that I was going to do something that was going to be, for my country, and then I was also going to do something that was going to be, I guess, for myself. And when I went there, it was somewhat different than I expected. It was actually better than I expected. So things worked well for me at the Army. I fit in.
Okay. And so tell me about your boot camp training experiences. What was that like?
Well, that was kind of interesting. we were assigned to a particular company, um, um, and once we got to basic training, we were assigned. They picked squad leaders and platoon leaders, and we were assigned to different barracks by alphabetical. Actually, how it turned out, and we had 4 different squads, but after the first week of training, they kind of watch what you're doing, and that's the thing. And the drill sergeant came up to me one day, and he said to me that the sergeant major would like to see me. So he took me into his office, and the sergeant major asked me if I'd like to run the company or be the drill sergeant pro tem when the drill sergeant left. Make sure that the company was doing what it was supposed to do. That you basically became in charge of all the lists for the fire watches, armory guards, KPs, anything else that had to be done. And so I took the job, and it actually was a great experience, because you really had to learn how to deal with people, and it was quite interesting. And I had no problems really with any of my fellow servicemen. We had some, like always, differences of opinions on how things could be done. But then once I kind of explained to them, I only have so many people to do so many jobs, that they all kind of figured out that I guess I was trying to do the best job I could.
Yeah.
So things worked out.
Okay. And so after boot camp, where did you go?
Well, once I finished my basic training, because I was with the National Guard, it was about 5 months. And I went back to the station here in Hartford, Connecticut. And then I did my weekend drills, just like, in my summer camps.
Okay.
And
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to just say my initial enlistment was for 6 years, because that's what you join for.
Yeah.
But as I went through, the unit and did this, that, and the other thing, again, the military was good to me. I liked the military. It fit my lifestyle, or whatever you want to call it. And the unit that I was in was a great unit. And the next thing I know, 6 years just went by, and it was like, do you want to re-up? And it was like, sure.
Yeah.
And the next thing, 21 years later, I retired.
Oh, wow. And so what were your basic assignments when you were, so you got out of basic, and then you were traveling around Connecticut. Tell me kind of like what the daily routine was as being a part of the military.
Well, in the Guard, I went to school to be a clerk.
Oh, okay.
And that's what I went to because they needed clerks, because in the supply unit, to keep track of all the property records and things like that. So that's so my after basic training, I went to an AIT school, which was clerk, like everything, filling out forms. Learn how to use the typewriter properly and all this kind of stuff. So that's what it was. But I had some experience in all that earlier with school, so it wasn't that big a deal.
Yeah.
And from there, I came back, and then I did clerk work for a while, because that's what my assignment was, my particular MOS. Mm-hmm. But then as time went on, you get promoted, and they had different openings. So then I got into the supply and service end of it, which was the rations. I got into that section, and we'd handle all the rations and stuff. Because as a supply and service battalion, we dealt with the units that were below us. We were like the unit that ordered all the food for the units that were out in the field. Mm-hmm. So that's what how we would. So that's what one of the things I was into. But I did, and then I just kept in that particular section of the unit. I just kept moving up from one job to the next,
oh, okay.
And I just so as I moved up from job to job in your training, the job became more important, so did your rank.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I just kept, working my way up through that particular section
Mm-hmm.
until I'm 87. And I was in charge at the end.
And during your time of basic training and when you were training as a clerk, do you remember any of your instructors that you were taught under or that taught you?
The names? Oh. God. Mm. I can see their faces.
Yeah.
But if I could probably, but my drill sergeant in basic training was he was a tough guy, because all drill sergeants have to be tough, but he was a fair guy, and if you did what you were supposed to do, you didn't have any problems with him, and he was. He taught me a lot. He was really a great guy. Basically, when I went to the clerk school, you were at that particular. I was in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and that was a self-paced school. So what you did was, when you went there, you had certain assignments that needed to be completed, and as you did them, you just went on to the next assignment. So the course itself could last 8 weeks, but if you went through it faster, you would graduate earlier, basically. So I went through like in 5 weeks. I finished the whole course. But once I finished, because I was, again, did it so well that the instructors there made me a semi-instructor, or an instructor now of the people that were having problems. So every day I used to come back, and I would work with the students now, or the other trainees, to get them so that they could understand what needed to be done.
Okay. And so you were in South Carolina for clerk school, you said?
Right, and basic training.
And basic. Oh, okay.
I went there for both.
So what did you do after clerk school then?
Well, once that was over, then I went back to Hartford.
Okay.
Yeah, because then I graduated everything, and then they sent us back.
Okay. And so where did you go? So you went to Hartford, and what did you do there? Like, where were you stationed, and what was it like there in Hartford?
Well, we worked out of when I first came back, we worked out of the Hartford Armory.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to drills, I'd go to the Hartford Armory, and we'd have all these different offices, and each office in the Armory would take care of different, things, because supplies. We'd handle clothing and rations and fuel, all that type of stuff, and and then we'd have the big, since the Army had this giant drill shed floor, we would do our maneuvers and training and that type of stuff out there. So, but for basic training, or not for basic training, for summer camps, we went to Camp Hartel, which was in Windsor Locks, and we would train up there. And they had, a barracks and a big field kitchen and all that stuff. And then up at that place, there was the Connecticut National Guard warehouse was located up there. And because we were, again, a supply and service battalion, we would run the warehouse when we would go for summer camp, And the full-time workers would be there, but we would help them do, things that we needed to do, because that's how we got our training. Because the 712 had the maintenance company and the fuel and all that stuff, and then the other warehouse had all the equipment where they kept all the clothing and the field gear and all the supplies for the units, and so we'd go there, and we did that for a number of years. And about 1976, we changed, I guess what they call a capstone unit, which is how your units fits into the military. And from then on, we started to go to different places. We went to Fort Drum, New York for a number of years. And then we went to Camp Edwards in Massachusetts for a few years. Then we went to Fort Drum, we went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. We went there almost 5 years in a row to get, because at that point there was a time when we were listed as the 238th Supply and Service Battalion, and our sister unit, which was another Supply and Service Battalion, but it was the regular Army Supply and Service Battalion, was stationed in Fort Bragg.
Okay.
So what happened is, if they would have been called up to go to a war zone or something of that nature, then what our assignment was to go to Fort Bragg and take their place as the base unit that would now be running the Fort Bragg system that they were doing. So we went there to train in their facilities, their warehouses, and it was quite an experience.
Okay. And so were you awarded any service medals or citations for your service?
Over the years, I was awarded quite a few. You got a lot of the basic type medals, good conduct medals, things like that, the reserve medals. But I mean, by the time I was done, I received like 3 Army Achievement Medals, an Army Commendation. I received the Connecticut State Medal of Merit.
Wow.
And the what's the name of that last medal? And the Army. I can see it, but I can't say it.
Oh, that's okay. And did you ever sustain any injuries during your service? Were you ever hurt or?
Well, not. I mean, like everything else, during training, and you pull a muscle here or you bang something there, things like that. But nothing drastic.
Okay.
Fortunately.
And how did you stay in touch with your family?
Well, back early on, we wrote letters. That was the thing. A mail call was always a big thing, especially at camp.
Yeah.
When you went to camp or when you, at basic training, that was the thing there. But even when we went to summer camp for 2 weeks, we would get letters from home or write something back, just to keep in touch.
Oh, that's nice. And what was the food like during your service, and being in all those different bases and everything like that?
Well, that's a good question, because actually that's the key. I mean, depending on where you were, they had different types of mess halls.
Yeah.
Some were old-fashioned military, like World War I mess halls, small, just little places, and then some of the big places, like you go to Fort Bragg, they had these huge mess halls. They hold a whole, hundreds of people. And they had the big lines and all the vending machines and milk machines and all that kind of stuff. So it was, depending on where you were, you got different types of food. But the military, the basic food, as far as I was concerned, was halfway decent. The food that you got in I think the big mess halls was the best.
Yeah, so places like Fort Bragg were much better than others.
Yeah, because they had the facilities, and they were full time.
Yeah.
And the same thing, the cooks, they were regular Army, full time, and that's what they did for a living. When you went to a guard unit or someplace, a smaller facility, it was run by guard members. Like if we went to, let's say, Camp Edwards, for the summer, then our unit would do the cooking. and stuff like that. So, we had decent people, but then it's like everything, a lot of stuff came out of cans, and they just put it in the, heat it up and things like that.
Okay. And, let's see, so how did you entertain yourself during downtime when you weren't doing your assignments or you weren't training or anything like that?
Well, depending on where you were, that's the thing. I mean, we'd get together, and we'd have, like everybody, just hang around and talk, or then we'd get together and have we'd play ball games, stuff like that. So at some summer camps, we'd be lucky enough to get the whole weekend off from, let's say, Friday night till Monday morning, and you could. A couple of us, we were at Fort Drum, New York, one year, and 4 of us got together and we went to Montreal for the weekend.
Okay.
And there was at that time there was a big expo at end of the year before, but it was still set up. So we got to walk around this big Montreal expo, and we got to see, it was a nice that type of thing. So if we had the time and there was a place to go, a few of us would get together and try to get to see something that we couldn't see because we were, like you say, in South Carolina, North Carolina, wherever, Massachusetts. So if we had the time, we'd try to take a ride around and get to see something.
So it's always different based on where you were.
Right, yeah, that was the thing, exactly.
I gotcha. And did you ever go on leave or anything like that?
Well, I don't think officially as you consider going on leave, because I was only actually full-time active duty technically when I was in for basic training in my AIT.
Yeah.
And I didn't come home for any one of those. Okay. I was there the whole time. So, and then once I was in the Guard, basically you're doing your weekend drills and your 2-week summer camp. So you basically, when you went to 2 weeks camp, you just stayed for your 2 weeks camp.
And do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events that occurred? Any jokes or pranks that your fellow servicemen would play on each other, anything like that?
Nothing. I mean, I don't know. I can't think anything drastic. I mean, the basic type of pranks that short sheets and silly things, that they would do. It's kind of nothing crazy. I don't think. Just some basic, some odd stuff that military guys would just do to each other. Things like that.
Okay. And what did you think of your officers and the fellow servicemen what you served with?
As far as my unit. My National Guard unit, the 238th, they were top notch. Really, that's the reason I stayed all those years, because I had one of the best units I could be in. That's how I felt. They were just great.
That's great. And did you keep a journal during your service?
No.
No. Okay. And so where were you when your service ended?
Well, the last unit, or the last place that we were stationed was the Meriden Armory. So at that, in that armory is where I took my last drill. It was December 1992.
Oh, okay.
That's when I officially retired from the military.
Okay. And so did you come home, and did your family have they didn't really have a homecoming or anything, because you stayed relatively close, so.
Oh yeah. The unit, it had a little retirement party, because it was myself and another guy retired at the same time.
Oh, that's nice.
So they had a little thing for us, and a cake and that kind of stuff at the unit.
Oh, okay. And so what did you do after you retired from the military? Did you go back to school with GI Bill or anything like that?
Well, no. things were, because at the time, well, when after I retired from the military, I was actually working for the United States Post Office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was, I already had a full-time job, and
oh, wow, okay.
so I didn't really need to worry about going back to school.
And how long did you work for the United States Post Office for?
Well, in the end, it was 36 years.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you were working with the post office while you were kind of in the process of retirement from the military?
Right.
Oh, okay.
But there's a whole story, I guess, in the middle there, if you want me to fill it in.
Oh, please do.
Well, I got the job working for I joined the military in 1971, and I was working for I was working for a grocery store at the time, and when I came back from basic training, I still worked for the grocery store, but after I worked for them for a while, I got laid off, like everything. And the military they have full-time positions as long as you're in the military. So it turned out that the National Guard unit, or that were in the warehouse full-time, was looking for a full-time warehouse clerk. Well, because I was working for the 238th, and we did our warehouse, our weekends in the warehouse, I thought it'd be a good job because it was something I was doing for my weekend drills, and they thought it was a good place for me to be too. So, actually, in 1975, I got a job working full time for the military, and I worked at the warehouse in Windsor Locks from 75 until 1979.
Oh, okay.
And then in 1979, I went and worked at the Hartford Army at the logistics section. So basically, I moved up from being the clerk person to the person who ordered the stuff down that went to the warehouse.
Oh, wow.
So it was a higher paying job.
Yeah.
You know, and I did that for another 5 years.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Right, and my basic responsibility really at that particular place was I handled all the food for the state of Connecticut.
Wow.
And I handled all the ammunition for the state of Connecticut that went to all the different places in the United States where they did training.
Oh, okay.
Right, it was really, quite a responsibility, you know, but it was a really good job. You know, I liked it.
Yeah.
But eventually, like everything else, I thought I could maybe do something else, and that's when I knew if I applied for the job at the post office that they were both military, not both government jobs, and that my time could be used one way or the other. So I applied to the post office, and I got a job working for the New Britain post office. In the end, I was interviewed in Plainville, Berlin, and finally I got a job in New Britain.
Oh, okay.
It just worked out that way because I lived in New Britain, so it was just a coincidence. But,
yeah. And so
but,
did you, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. So from there, that's why I got that job in 1984. So from 84 until 92, when I retired, that's how I was still working for the post office. And then I stayed and worked at the post office until 2009, when I retired from there.
Wow. And so do you always remember having enough supplies while going and like managing and working with all the supplies that were sent out?
Yeah, I would say that we really didn't have a problem with any kind of supply chain as far as getting material to the units, getting material to our warehouses, and back out again. I didn't see, as far as the National Guard went,
And do you recall any particular assignments or jobs that were stressful or that you felt stressed because, or anything that was like difficult for you?
Well, I would say, when I was working full-time for the Guard, the position of handling the ammunition was probably one of the most stressful because you had to submit a report to the National Guard Bureau and the Department of Defense. They wanted to know exactly what was ordered and who got what, when, why, and where. And then they would track the information you sent and marry everything up. And then they would do a report on what you sent down as the state. And they would give you scores, right? And that was the thing, you know, they were looking to get, you know, 100% because they wanted to know where all that ammunition went.
Oh, yeah.
You know, keep track of everything that's going on. So that was kind of stressful because you needed to keep track of all those numbers month by month and make sure you got those reports back with that 100%.
Wow.
You know, but.
So, did you make any close friendships during your service?
Oh yeah.
And do you stay in touch with them today?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. No, every year the National Guard has a retirees picnic.
Oh, that's nice.
In August, and we all, I think 9 of us were there this year from the unit, and every year it's +1 or minus whatever, depending on who can come and who can't. But the same guys, you know, we always get together at this picnic and we reminisce who's doing what and how and why.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, so.
And how did your military experience influence your thinking about war or the military in general?
Well, I think the military is definitely, you know, a must for this country. No matter which branch of service you're in, we just need to be on top of what's going on in this world. I lost my train of thought.
Do you like the structure of it, the training that they do in order to prepare you for the service and everyday life and things like that?
Oh, yeah, I'm kind of lost my
it's okay.
train of thought there. Yeah, as far as the military is the structure of it and how I guess that's what I'm kind of trying to think about here is that's kind of what I guess I liked about it. I'm kind of, you know, I like to know what's going on and what needs to be done. And the military is kind of that way, you know. You need to know what's going to happen. And they, you know, people and everything is structured from, you know, kind of like always the top down, and everybody's in the loop, and they, you know, and everybody has their place. So, and because of that, you know, things get done.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what kind of sets the military apart from, you know, like some other organizations. You know, it's just everybody's just kind of knows what's going on, and they kind of keep their, you know, hand in the till or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And did you join any veteran organizations, and if so, which ones?
Actually, no.
You're not a part of any?
No.
Okay. And how did your service and experience affect your life personally?
Well, I would say it was a very positive experience. Like I said, when I went to basic training, I expected to go there and be, I don't know, treated differently. And instead, I maybe just not necessarily myself, but I felt that the military treated you like you treated them. In other words, all the military wanted you was to do was what you needed to do, and do it as good as you can do it. Mm-hmm. And if you did that, then that's all they wanted. And they just, you know, and then it was basically the same from then on. The military is just, to me, they just want you to do your best. Mm-hmm. And if you just do your best that you can do, then the military, there was no problem with being in the military. To me, my whole 21 years was a positive thing. And the men I served with, the officers that I served with, the places that we went, the training that we did, some of it was tough. You know, we went out, bivouac, we lived the same like everybody. You know, you sat in the rain and you're cold and whatever you did, and you ate your rations, sitting with the rain coming down and whatever. But, you know, it was just part of the deal. You know, you just did what you were supposed to do, and, you know, you took whatever you took, and, and as time went along, you know, everything just worked out one way or another.
And is there anything that you'd like to add that hasn't been covered in this interview?
No. I don't believe so. I can't think of anything special.
Okay. Well, Roger, I'd like to thank you for your service and also for taking the time to be interviewed today. We very much appreciate from the Veterans History Project.
All right. You're welcome.